Welcome to the Fright Lab. I'm Lucas Yoakum, and this is the 23rd entry into our 31 for 31 challenge, 31 days of horror, 31 days of Halloween, whatever you guys are calling it this year. I hope you're having as much fun watching these movies and listening to me talk about them as I am having fun watching them and talking about them. It's kind of my thing, I guess. So, tonight, 23rd entry into this this marathon, this long run of mine that I've been doing. This is the first time I've ever tried to record every single movie I've watched, and woof, it is quite the challenge, my friends, quite the challenge. So tonight we are talking about the J-horror classic NoroI, The Curse, directed by Shiraiishi Koji. So what is NoroI, The Curse? We very briefly brought this up in our episodes about found footage and the horror cinema verite phenomenon. And this is a kind of a weird one for that field, not just because it's Japanese, that would be incredibly rude of me to say, but that this movie is very Japanese. The media of the film itself is very different than what we were seeing in America around 2005. Specifically, I tend to think of this film as something of a cultural artifact from that time period, because a little bit of everything shows up in this movie. Sure, the movie is technically a mockumentary, and it is sort of about found footage because part of the film is a documentary that was being filmed that is later rediscovered, we'll say, in this incredibly unpleasant way. And then on top of it, you have these kind of chunks throughout the film that are, they are the televised portions of various types of Japanese TV show, these kind of variety shows that were very popular, some supernatural haunt stuff, some pop culture-y things. But ultimately, the story of NoroI is about a paranormal investigator who has taken a very peculiar case. What he thinks is just, maybe ghosts, maybe a haunting, something like that. And it very quickly spirals out into a found footage Japanese folk horror freakout. That's the only way I can describe it. It is one of these movies that if I try to outline the plot in any sort of beat to beat way, I end up sounding like I am absolutely just making shit up. And to be fair, part of the act of science, as Adam Savage has often said, is, the difference between science and just fucking around is writing stuff down. Well, I wrote stuff down because this is the Fright Lab. We do science here after all. So, this is one of those movies I like to recommend to people who like either folk horror or people who like the found footage thing. However, there is one kind of problem with it that I worry about, and that is that this movie is kind of loaded to bear with nuances of Shinto and like esoteric Buddhist practices, stuff that if you grew up Japanese, you wouldn't really think twice about. But as Americans, I sometimes wonder if that's maybe lost on some of the audiences. Okay, for instance, and I'm not spoiling anything by talking about this part of the movie, but there's a sequence where they're describing a particular type of Shinto practice in this one little village that no longer exists. And when they're at the temple bowing to the spirits, when they're making prayers or whatever, they would bow, clap 4 times, and then bow again. We as Americans who don't practice Shinto go, so what? What difference does that make? Well, if you grew up Shinto, if you grew up in Japan, especially in a very traditional household where you spend time at a Shinto temple for certain occasions, you would know that is not how you bow at a Shinto temple. Now, there are always going to be regional variations and varying styles within any culture. This happens. It's not that weird. But there's stuff like that throughout the film that I fear is lost on a lot of audiences. And I just happen to be the type of guy who knows that stuff, so it works out. It would be rather like going to a Catholic church and then finding out that every 3 years they just do a full-scale black mass. It would be very weird, right? For people who grow up in a Christian or Catholic household, that'd be very strange. It's kind of the same thing. So I wonder that maybe it goes over people's heads in that regard. And not because people aren't smart enough to catch it, but because it's just so out there. I had the opportunity to rewatch NoroI this year in a theater at our local art house. And it's a very interesting thing to see a movie with a group of people who are not ready for it when you already know the film. Like the opening of NoroI, like the first, 20 minutes, because it's only 90 minutes, 2 hours. It's not a long movie. The first 20 or so minutes do have some actual comedy. There is a lot of little bits of humor, stuff that plays a little funny. But by the dead center of the movie, it starts to get very, very dark. And from that point forward, there is not a laugh to be had anywhere in the runtime. So it's one of those movies that getting to watch an audience that at first is kind of chuckling and clearly not taking the movie seriously, to watch them slowly but surely over the course of a runtime begin to kind of melt into their seats and get very, very nervous or very, very disturbed or very weirded out. Man, as a horror fan, as someone who's watched a lot of these movies, it's extremely satisfying to watch. There was one person in the theater, I remember. She looked like the sort who has kind of seen it all when it comes to horror movies. And watching her by the end of the film be basically curled up in her seat, like hand over her mouth, it's just like, oh yeah, this is the reason why horror is, it's so fun to expose people to horror. The one thing that I will say is that I've been trying to think about, like, what is an American equivalent to this film? Like, what could I recommend to an audience to say, like, it's kind of like X American film, or if you like X, go watch NoroI. And the bottom line is I couldn't come up with anything. There was a film that came out of Korea a handful of years ago called Incantation. And Incantation is, okay, those of you who have met me in person or have chatted with me via emails know that I will crack the joke that Korean cinema always has to be 2 hours long for some reason, and I don't know why that is. Incantation runs a little long, in my opinion, but has a similar premise, and a lot of the scares are super intense. I will say it's one thing I think Korean horror gets right in a lot of ways. Boy, those movies are scary. They really get the fear element of it. So yeah, Incantation, if you've seen it before, it was on Netflix for like 100 years. I would guess it's probably still there. So if you like NoroI, or you're wanting to find something to, to have as an analogy to the film, to maybe say, oh, am I going to like this? If you liked the Korean film Incantation, you would really like NoroI. So with that, my friends, siblings, what do you think of NoroI, The Curse? Do you like spooky, weird folk horror from around the world as much as I do? I hope so. That would be nice to have some companions in this field. And if you haven't seen it, are you going to go watch it? Is that going to end up in this kind of end of the Halloween season list? Like, we're right around the bend, guys. You're going to have to get on it if you're going to watch 31 movies here. Let us know what you guys are going to do with the last part of your 31 days by reaching out to us at thefrightlabpodcast@gmail.com. We can be found on just about every social media platform. We're also on YouTube. We are on Discord as well. Just look for The Fright Lab. You'll find us. So it's time for me to let you guys go to go watch a good scary movie. But when you're doing that, as you're popping your popcorn or pouring your beverage, remember your old friends here, specifically me, Lucas Yoakum. I write and research this entire thing, and Joseph Wren mans the ones and twos. He's always the one producing this and making me sound, well, mostly reasonably intelligent, I would like to think. For what it's worth, however, we appreciate each and every one of you, and we will talk to you all again very soon. And hey, guys, enjoy the rest of your October, huh?